Are you ready? Okay, welcome. Welcome to the Cheltenham Democratic Committee Digital Forum. This is our first forum, this way digital. I'm Herb Brockington, the 7th Ward Commissioner here in Cheltenham, and I'd like to introduce Megan Gorman. She's the first chair of the CDC and will be co-moderating this event with me tonight. Megan?
Hello, thanks for tuning in. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge the CDC Digital Forum Committee, which is the committee that's putting on this event. Neither Irv nor myself nor any of the organizers is associated with or has endorsed any of the candidates. In addition to Irv and me, we have CDC Chairman, co-chair, Deb McCarter, CDC Treasurer Ted Saraby, Area 9 leader Ken Mirsky. We have Bill England, our technology wizard and the brains behind this Zoom forum. And we also have Steve Burns, former Cheltenham Township Finance Officer, and a very important person here tonight because he's our timekeeper.
Fantastic. Thanks, Megan. So here are how things are going to go tonight. Megan and I will ask the candidates questions from the forum committee and submit it through email, Facebook, and YouTube. The candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each question, except for the first two. The first two questions, we are allowing 90 seconds, and they will receive a on-screen time warning from Mr. Stephen Burns. Not all the candidates will answer every question, but every candidate will get the opportunity to revisit any question at the end of the forum, if time permits. Megan?
So I'd like to introduce the six candidates to represent the 154th District in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. They are Jay Connors, an elected official for more than a decade in Jenkintown. Jay works in marketing and development, business development. Jennifer Luger serves on the Jenkintown Council and is a local anti-violence activist. Napoleon Nelson, Cheltenham Township Finance Officer and second Vice Chair of the CDC. Adrian Redd, a sociology professor who also serves as a Democratic committee person in Jenkintown. Ray Sosa, a longtime management consultant and former chair of the Human Rights Advocacy Committee for 3 different US governors. Ray lives in Cheltenham. And Gretchen Weishart, a longtime attorney, special counsel to SEPTA, and formerly chief counsel to the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue. Gretchen also lives in Cheltenham.
Thank you, Megan. So now, this is really important. The primary election is now on June 2nd. Although the polls will be open, the governor has encouraged us to all vote by mail. To apply for a mail-in ballot, go to votespa.com. That's VOTESPA.com. Your application must be received in Norristown by Tuesday before the election. That's May 26th, in order to receive a ballot in the mail. To check on a mail-in or absentee ballot application, go to pavoterservice.pa.gov and click on the election ballot status. That's pavoterservice.pa.gov. So now we're going to get right into it. We're ready for the question. This is our first question of the night. And this question, well, I'll read the question first. If you were the state representative for the 154th district during the current COVID-19 pandemic and was forced to vote between opening our district businesses or leaving a stay-at-home order in place until all necessary testing, contact tracing, and medical support were available, how would you vote? And please give your reason. This is a 90-second question that you can take. And the first person that we're going to ask is Adrian.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you, organizers. So this is not a pass-fail. It's not a yes or no. There are, in fact, quite specific stages that have been laid out by the CDC. For example, at one point, the deaths in New York City were doubling every 72 hours. At this moment, the deaths in New York City, which may have an infected population of between 13 and 21%, are only doubling every 6 to 7 days. So the infection rate is slowing, but it's not decreasing yet. There's a difference between having the rate at which it's increasing get slower and having it actually start to reverse. And so it's not a matter of voting to completely reopen or completely shut everything down. There are specific criteria that exist that we know of. And in other communities and other countries, there's a step-by-step stage of how do we know when we should start to reopen society and pursue a new normal. And there are steps to reopening. For example, on May 1st, public places where it's easy for people to stay 6 to 8 feet apart are going to start to reopen. And so we know what these steps are. And in fact, that's what we'll do, is we'll have an evidence-based policy for reopening.
Okay, Jay, can you answer that?
I would vote to keep the state closed. And the reason for that is I think there's still a lot of unknown out there. I understand, I get why some states might be choosing to open because, they're concerned about the economy, which is a very valid concern, especially when you had 3.8 million people apply for benefits because they're out of work. And I think it was close to 4 million the week prior. So it's definitely a concern, but I just don't think there's enough known yet. And I also think that there's a lot of different information coming from a lot of different sources. And I think we need to give science a chance. I don't think we've done that yet. So again, I would vote to keep the state closed. I would definitely need more information. I don't even think we've given it, enough time. I think it's only been a month to 5 weeks since we've been closed. And so I think it needs more time. I think we need to give science a chance here. Any medical professional I've spoken to is in favor of keeping the state closed. Yeah, so I would definitely vote to keep the state closed.
Thank you. Jennifer?
As with almost everything, there's no one size fits all solution to this. I agree with the others that every decision we make has to be based on data. So there's a big difference between getting a haircut where you're in really close proximity to the person and having landscaping service where you never come into, they don't come into contact with each other. So that's a lot safer. So I think we need to be reasoned about this. I like the governor and Dr. Levine's plan of a phased return to normalcy. I am extremely concerned about keeping our healthcare or our first responders, our essential employees safe. I'm the mother of a nurse who's treating COVID patients every day and who didn't have appropriate equipment, personal protective equipment until a couple of weeks ago. I chair the Fire Commission and Public Safety Council committee in Jenkintown. So I know the risks that our first responders are facing every day. So I'm in no hurry to return to normal. We have to make sure that measures are in safe, that we have the testing, we have the precautions, we're able to do the tracing, and we do a phased response so that it's safe and checked at every phase before we go to the next one.
Thanks, Jen. So we're going to go on to question 2, but we're going to stick with the pandemic. As state representative, how would you respond to the dilemma of what to do when state revenue has been cut $4 billion because of the pandemic, and you have to choose between cutting education and social programs or raising taxes, such as the state personal income tax, by 30%? Again, you have 90 seconds to answer this question. Napoleon?
I'm sorry, so the question was, what would we do with a potential $4 billion cut in the state's budget? And for those who don't follow these things quite regularly, that's a little bit more than a 10% cut to the budget. The state's budget is usually, anywhere from 30, to 34, $36 billion. So a $4 billion cut is quite significant. And unfortunately, the answer to that, as with most others, is you have to live your priorities. We as a state have to ensure that we're doing what we can do to always educate our children, to always take care of our seniors, and to always ensure that we as Pennsylvanians have the resources, have the opportunities we need to find employment, to find healthcare, and to find justice. What does that leave you, and how do you make the rest of your budget work becomes a little bit more difficult. Yes, you absolutely have to understand where government has perhaps gone awry. You have to take this time to understand areas of the government that perhaps have gotten too big. In order to govern appropriately and in order to govern well, we always must keep in mind that government is not here to provide jobs just for those within the service. Government is here to provide services to the public. Government is here to provide goods and needed equipment to those who are residents. So as a state representative, my job would be, how do we reassess the size of government to ensure that our priorities are and always being met?
Time.
Thanks, Napoleon. Ray, would you answer the question?
Well, we have, during my race for lieutenant governor, we discovered that there's a lot of revenue that's not being collected in the state. That's the first. You need to find out where your uncollected revenue is. Our natural resources by no means are being collected fairly, okay? And that's penalizing the middle class specifically. And then we have a lot of public agencies that are simply not being watched over how much they spend. So first we need to see where a leak of money is. After that, and we know we've explored all our money faucets that we have in Pennsylvania, then we need to find out what revenues need to be allocated to the right side of the coin. Like it's been mentioned before, schools and healthcare always comes first. And then you have to keep the infrastructure on. So my first step would be exactly what revenues we need to mainstream so that we can present those to the townships and they can take full advantage of what's out there. And then the programs that are being given to the people that shouldn't be given to. And that includes grants to corporations that don't deserve them. And that includes things like privatizing our justice system with prisons. That's
Time.
a lot of money. So,
Thank you, Ray.
you.
Gretchen, want to give it a shot?
Sure. So Pennsylvania has looked at huge holes in our budget before. We faced significant problems with the education budget after the 2008 crisis, when the federal government stopped funding a lot of our school funding, and we had to figure out a way to make that work then. We're still fighting back from the loss of those federal funds. I think it's a false choice right now because we don't know what the federal government is going to do to help the states and the municipalities as we work through this. With 30 million Americans out of work right now, we have to rethink how we run this economy, how we fund services. And that includes rethinking what we were doing to help people, right? We need to fund our schools. It's critical to put the value of people first. That's schools, that's healthcare. If this crisis has shown anything, it's that we need to make those investments. We're all struggling at home to try to educate our kids when we're not educators and try to keep everybody healthy. But one thing we've learned is that probably the better way than just putting people on unemployment was actually to provide money so that companies could keep people on the payroll and then make up a difference if they cut hours, like they did in countries like Germany after the 2008 crisis, where they're not seeing a significant issue and they were able to keep people employed, keep healthcare, and keep everyone healthy and recover faster.
Thanks, Gretchen. Irv?
Guess I should unmute. All right, so let's stick with a tough question.
Respond to that question if it's possible. I feel that there's something else really important to say that the other candidates haven't said.
Who's talking?
This is Adrienne Red.
Oh, no, you can't do that.
I'm sorry, Adrian, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna direct the questions. And then if you wanted to respond back at the very end, you'll have time to do so.
Yeah. Okay. Fracking both poison the environment and provide jobs in the Commonwealth. How would you approach the issue of fracking, thinking about the environment and the economy if you are elected? You will have 60 seconds to answer this question. And and going forward, all the questions are just 1 minute answers. So we're going to start with Adrian. Now you can pop in there. This is all about fracking.
This is not a zero-sum game. There are ways that even in this time of medical crisis, we can make the pie from which we get revenues larger. So where we talk about fracking, I am absolutely 100% against fracking. People have said to me, would you be willing to phase out fracking while you still get some separation tax? There is no amount of money that we can pay that's worth poisoning our children. And I wouldn't phase out fracking any more than I would phase out slavery, human bondage. There are lots of other places to look for revenue. Complete legalization of adult cannabis, reducing the mass incarceration in the state, which is a money saver. Possibly even cutting Pennsylvania State Park staff, some right sizing of municipal governments. There are all kinds of places that we can cut money and all kinds of places that we can find money, but we should discontinue fracking. We're poisoning ourselves.
Thank you. Gretchen?
What would I do about fracking? Well, with the price of oil dropping and actually in the negative lately, I think we have the luxury right now of rethinking fracking. We could take a moratorium, we could pause to do more research, to do more, invest in science to figure out if there is a way to safely and environmentally, in an environmentally sound manner, actually extract and then tax the gas as it comes out of the ground. It's not a zero-sum game, as Adrian said. There are ways to balance this, and right now in this current crisis, we have an opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Okay, so we're going to stick with environmental issues. This question is, how will you promote renewable energy in Pennsylvania if you're elected? And please be specific. You have a minute to answer the question. Jay?
Well, I would begin by starting to educate people. And I think that renewable energy has made progress since 2004 with the Alternative Energy Portfolio Act, where they wanted to increase alternative energy since by 2021, and I think by 18%. And right now, I think that we're at about 15%. So I think that people need to be educated, and they also need to. I'll tie in the climate change too, because I mean, our shores are eroding, and we're getting extra rainfall, and that all has to do with things like CO2, methane gas. So I think we need to promote things like the wind farms and the just different types of renewable energy like that.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Ray?
That was an opportunity that I had to research when I was running for lieutenant governor. The answer is simple. Progress goes where the money is. So we have to give commercial and residential incentives to make sure that people have a motivation to change from what they have right now into renewable energy, solar, thermal, gas, etc. It's not happening now because economic incentive is not there. So we have to do our part so that so it's a good value for our businesses, our corporations, and our residents to switch. Right now I have 6 of my friends that have absolutely no motivation other than being good to the environment to change. In fact, it's very costly to change into green, for example, solar. So we need to change that so that people get incentives for switching to green. And we're gonna see the income on that one.
Thanks, Ray. Herb?
All right, question 5. This one is for 1 minute answer. the Trump administration has gutted many of the EPA regulations, leaving environmental protection largely to the state. What protection do you think is the most important for the Pennsylvania DEP to address? Napoleon?
Sure. So, and I'll actually loop some of this back in with fracking. What we have seen is a complete erosion of our ability to monitor whether it is the quality of our water. We've seen that certainly with the output of fracking. We've seen that with PFAS and what's happening with our drinking waters. Even the ability to appropriately monitor infrastructure for moving oil and natural gas, pipelines, et cetera. The inability to make sure that those resources that we're using to help power this country are actually doing so in a safe and effective way makes even using those resources quite harmful to society. I'm trying to hold back on the words that I use to describe this administration, but we have to have oversight. We absolutely do.
Okay, great. Jennifer?
We have a constitutional obligation as elected officials to protect, to be stewards of the environment in Pennsylvania. And our current legislators, the Republican majority, has been leaving that to the wayside. Water quality is first and foremost. We're poisoning our children. Fracking is immoral. We're leaving our state to the oil companies, and there's really no amount of taxation that would make that okay. So it would have to be in conjunction with providing other jobs to the workers, because I understand that is it's a stressful situation when labor is in favor of fracking because it provides good jobs. We have to be able to provide a Green New Deal in Pennsylvania.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to do our first Facebook question. And this question was actually submitted just for Jay. So Jay, just for you.
Wonderful.
Okay, I received a mailer from Jay Connor that highlighted his commitment to health, patient, and nurses' rights. I would like to know specifically how would he do to demonstrate the commitment as a state rep?
Yeah, thanks for the question, whoever sent it. And just for the record, I was endorsed by PASNAP, which is the Pennsylvania Nurses Union, something I'm very proud of. And basically what I would do is what I'm already doing as a union member with the Teamsters. I'm on the safety committee, and one of the things I would do is ensure that there was workplace safety for nurses when it comes to understaffed nurses, or making sure that they have the correct personal protective equipment, which in many cases they do not. So I would definitely be an advocate for them. I would be a voice for them. I've gone before the PASNAP. I've had discussions with them. I've voiced my concerns, as I have with other unions, and work and job safety, workplace safety. So that's what I would continue to do, and I've had success.
Thank you, Jay. Megan?
So that audience member provided a really nice segue for our next question. Millions of Pennsylvanians do not get treatment or put off doctor's visits due to high insurance copays and coinsurance costs. What do you believe needs to change in current state laws regarding those problems specifically and healthcare in general? Jen, can you start us off on that?
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute myself when you said the two specific things.
Sorry.
I know, my fault.
What do you believe needs to change in current state laws regarding those particular problems, high insurance copays, coinsurance costs, and healthcare in general?
Okay, as I've studied at the beginning of this, I was not sure how I felt about it, but through the pandemic, through talking with healthcare workers and physicians and people who don't have job-based insurance, I have become a proponent for Medicare for all. I believe it's the only system, a single payer system is the only thing that is going to even out the gross inequality of people having access to safe and quality healthcare in Pennsylvania.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Jen. Gretchen, would you like to tackle that?
Sure. This is a really personal issue to me because I worked on this issue a long time ago, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I worked on the plan for the Massachusetts Medical Association that became Romneycare, which was the basis for Obamacare, helping to bring healthcare to millions and millions and millions of Americans. I also worked on a single payer healthcare plan for then Representative Bernie Sanders to provide healthcare for millions of Americans as well. The federal government is going to have to come to the realization that work-based health insurance is not a workable system. We need to guarantee some sort of minimum coverage for all Americans so that regardless of our employment status, we can take care of basic needs. This healthcare crisis has highlighted that, and I've spent a lot of time working on this issue.
Thank you. Irv? Irv?
Okay. All right. This is another 1-minute answer. Well, the cost of state mandated education programs outstrip the funding that our school district receive from the state, forcing local taxpayers to bear the increasing burden. What do you propose to relieve the local burden and provide a quality education for each student? Napoleon?
Thank you. Yeah, to relieve the burden on local taxpayers, there are a couple different areas. One is just more state funding, right? So the state does have a nice big 30-something billion budget. We'll see how much of it is lost to COVID. When you live your priorities, if your priorities are ensuring that we educate our students, then you have the resources available to give the students and the school districts what they need. The other areas that you would absolutely attack, and that we would attack when we get to Harrisburg, are certainly providing more resources to the local districts through taxing of internet businesses. Amazon is doing a great job right now. Thank you so much to those who are delivering packages seemingly daily to my house. They don't pay a dime in local tax to our school district, whereas the grocery stores around the corner do. And then we would also make sure that we are doing what we can to ease the burdens on those who are reeling from it most, seniors, those low income. There's more that we can do to inform our.
Thank you. Jay?
Two things. First, the Pennsylvania State Constitution, it's a level playing field for all taxpayers, no matter how much money you make, regardless of your income. So I think that there needs to be, the more you make, the more you should be taxed, which should then go to the public school system. That's the way I look at it. It kind of sounds a little like Bernie Sanders, but that's how I feel. And also another thing that always jumps out at me when you talk about looking for financial resources to go towards education, the state of Pennsylvania budgets $2.6 billion for our prison system. So I always talk about, how about we end mass incarceration? I mean, it costs $50,000 to keep somebody in jail. That could otherwise be going to our school, especially if they've been sitting there for 25 years and are rehabilitated. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to stick with education. So education in Pennsylvania does not receive the support and resources to ensure that all students in grades K through 12 have access to a quality and relevant education that prepares them for success in life. What budgetary ideas do you have about funding public ed in the Commonwealth that you believe can actually be passed? Ray, can you hop on that one?
I think big plans have to start at home. So we do have, and my position has always been, we have a lot of missed opportunities that everybody's just ignoring, and it's our abandoned, crumbling business district. Okay, we do have a lot of opportunities and they're being squandered. That is simply a wealth of funding that can be put for township use, that could be used to lower our property taxes, to keep our people in, and increasing the viability of our school district. And it's not being done. So once we're effective, that could be a model for the rest of the state. But we do have a declining district at this particular point. And there's a lot of massively profitable business that's been there in the past. There's no reason why they couldn't be profitable in the future with our help. And I'll bring that knowledge.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Adrian, would you like to tackle that?
I've taught about how we need to reform public education funding for a long time. One of the things that we need to do is we need to expedite the fair funding formula for education. And another thing is that we need to have a state representative. One of the reasons that State Representative Steve McCarter endorsed me is because he sees my toughness and my leadership. He sees that I've made things happen all along. So for example, the state of Pennsylvania spends $240 million subsidizing horse racing. There are all kinds of special interests, and you need to have somebody who simply isn't owned by anyone. This seat is my desire to serve the state. It's not a stepping stone for me, and I would bring that toughness, that leadership, that knowledge of the issues from having taught sociology, from having made things happen in the community. If we go after those kinds of wastes of money and special interests, we're going to have enough money to make sure that every single child in the state of Pennsylvania gets the education that they need.
Thanks, Adrian.
All right, thank you. So now let's move to guns. Firearms lead to about 30,000 deaths each year in our country. The Second Amendment provides the right to bear arms. What policies would you push in your first term to reduce gun violence in our county? Let's start with Jennifer.
Okay. The most important bill that we can pass in Pennsylvania right now is the Extreme Risk Protection Order, or Red Flag Law. They have been passed with broad bipartisan support in 19 states and the District of Columbia. And the only thing that is stopping it from passing in Pennsylvania is our rules that let a committee chair keep a bill stuck in committee. If we revise those rules so that a bipartisan coalition within a committee could get a bill to the floor, we would pass that life-saving legislation with no problem in Pennsylvania. It is most effective in preventing gun suicides, like my husband, and mass shootings, because the shooters are often flagged in the community as a danger before the incident.
Ray?
Well, I think that military-style weapons don't belong anywhere. I think that the loop for the gun shows in Pennsylvania should be eliminated. And I also think that it is pretty incredible that some people that are running have wiped out half their police force because they couldn't balance the budget, exposing us to gun violence, but yet they're pro the control of guns. So it is something that we should start at home to the start with the big plans. I do think that's my position, and I think we need the police protection to be a good value to the community right now.
Okay, thank you. Megan?
Thanks, Ray. We're going to stick with gun safety for the next question. What actions will you take to address the needs of people dealing with mental health issues within the realm of gun safety legislation? Jay, can you start off?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I would go back to what Jen said, and that was the Extreme Risk Protection Order that's in the House right now. I think that's designed, almost specifically for people with mental health issues, because it gives families the tools to deal with family, loved ones that are having a crisis. I mean, it could be something, it could even be, as my understanding of it, it can even be temporary. Like if, you know, someone's going through a bad divorce or something like that, and they're really having a hard time with it, the family has the power and the tools to step in and to prevent that loved one or family member from acquiring a gun. And that's through the extreme risk protection order. And so I would definitely support that and work to get that through. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Adrian?
Human rights are women's rights. We need to understand that mental health is health. One of the things that we need to do is we need to reach out to leaders in the community and destigmatize mental health. One of the ways that we will prevent gun accidents and gun violence by virtue of mental health, but also just by virtue of sloppy handling of guns, is by not making enemies of the lawful sportsmen and gun owners in this state. Let's give people the respect that they deserve and not infantilize them. Make AR-15s, like automatic weapons, legal, but with many, many background checks and approvals. They're too dangerous to be ubiquitous in civilian hands. And there's, you know, where we have machine guns that are freely available in some societies, they're regulated. If you have to have a license to drive a car, you have to have a mental health and a legal background check in order to own a gun.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay, so it's time for our second audience question. The way that we are doing these, and our one audience member who had this question specifically for Jay really made things work out for us. Unless an audience question is directed at one of you specifically, we're just going to go through alphabetically. Jay was first. So number 2 is Jen. Jen, the Pennsylvania Council for the Arts has halted grants to arts organizations due to the COVID-19 crisis. Arts organizations have been counting on these grants to survive. What would you do on the floor of the House to help these people?
I think that arts are an integral part of our culture and our society, and it can't be quantified in that they bring money in, but they do add immeasurably to the fabric of our lives. I would want to continue funding for arts and culture during the pandemic because people need them now more than ever. Some arts institutions have been doing some of the best distance service for our communities. You see free virtual tours of art museums all over the world, and these are the kinds of things that are keeping us going now. So obviously in the context of our overall budget as we come out of this, everything is on the table to be considered, but right now I'd keep it going.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So given the recent community pushback on safety injection sites in Philadelphia, how would you address your residents' concerns if a site were to be proposed in our district? Gretchen?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I missed the first part of it.
Given the recent community pushback on safety injection sites in Philadelphia, how would you handle an injection site being proposed for the 154 district?
So that's an issue. A safe injection site issue is something that requires multi-stakeholder review and multiple discussion with the doctors, the healthcare providers, and the residents. It's a tragedy that we have to deal with the crisis that the heroin has brought to us, and it's at our doorstep. It affects almost every family in our district, and we need to deal with it. But it requires a lot of community input and discussion, including working with the police and the law enforcement officers. Great.
Napoleon?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So safe injection sites are a great tool for helping a community heal from the scourge that is the opioid epidemic. It is ravaging our communities. It is hurting people that we know and love. And the ability to have a safe, which is the operative word here, site is really what everyone is after. It is what we need as a community from a health perspective, from a public safety perspective. And from a patient and patient's rights perspective is an understanding of what safe looks like. So yes, we absolutely need to have conversations with the community. We also need to make sure that we've had the appropriate conversations with medical professionals. We need to understand and have the appropriate conversations with addiction counseling. We need to have had appropriate conversations with police and with mental health workers and with families of those who are suffering. So those are the areas.
Thank you, Napoleon. Megan?
Okay, would you support legislation to close Pennsylvania's Berks County controversial immigration family detention facility? And would you sponsor such a bill? Adrian?
Yes, I would be very pleased to close it. And one of the things that makes me very proud to be a Pennsylvanian is that Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, the Philadelphia region, have long been a sanctuary for people. When people were displaced after Hurricane Katrina, a great number of those people came up to the Philadelphia area. When there were people who were refugees, the Hmong community that has ended up being an enormous asset came from the hill areas of Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and found a home here in Pennsylvania. Penn's great experiment, the place that people can come and where we have tolerance of people from all kinds of cultural backgrounds. And so not only would I like to see that Berks County site closed, but I'd like to see people come into our community, be reabsorbed, and become productive, creative, welcomed members of our society, and not people who are stigmatized or shunted to one side. Let's live what as Emma Lazarus's poem says on the Statue of Liberty, shall we?
Thanks, Adrian. Jen?
Yes, I would. Am I on mute? Yeah. Yes, I would absolutely want to close the Berks facility. It is not what our country stands for, locking up children and families and treating them in such an inhumane manner. I would sponsor the legislation, and I would work very hard to get it passed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving right along. How do you see the role of constituent services in the state representative office? How are you going to, what's your role with that? Ray?
The main goal is connecting the state resources to our district where directly impacts the residents. So how I see it right now is we need to develop our district. We need to make sure that our people are not being foreclosed due to taxation. We need to make sure that our people don't have to leave to get employment. And we need to make sure that we shine statewide as a center for transportation. So, and that will bring progress and make us thrive into the future. We need to attract younger people to our area so that we can have a thriving community for the next decade. So, but the main role is to continue the mission that has been had so far, and to add services to that to make sure the community thrives into the future.
Thank you. Napoleon?
Sure. So I think constituent services are, just really the front line for residents to the resources that are available, not just in the state representative's office, but obviously the resources available to the state, and to Megan, to Bill Taylor, and the rest who do this work every day now. Congratulations, you guys are doing a tremendous job. I'm sure we are all hearing it as we go door to door. The area that I would like to continue to really invest in, though, is using that same constituent services mindset to working more collaboratively with the rest of local government to help bring Harrisburg here into our district. When I was on the state representatives, when I was on the school board, even now as I'm in the finance office, I know that there's more work that we can do so that we can realize at the local governing level those same benefits of statewide resources, PD, Department of Revenue, and others. So great job, and there's more we can do.
Thank you, Napoleon. Megan?
Thanks. There are proposals out there to reduce the size of the Pennsylvania legislature. Would you support this sort of legislation? And if you would, just tell us why. And if you don't support it, why don't you? Jay, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I would support decreasing the size of the Pennsylvania state legislation, mainly because of the amount of money that you would save by doing that. You know, you could save a heck of a lot of money. I'm not sure by how much, and I always thought that a smaller government is a better government. So I think that by reducing the size, again, you save money. And I think we can all work effectively with less. I mean, I think there's quite a few state reps in my area alone. So yeah, I would be in favor of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Gretchen, how about you?
I would be in favor of sponsoring legislation to reduce the size of the legislature. We have one of the largest, most costly legislatures in the country. And with technology, we can do the frontline work, which is the first priority of constituent services and working with municipalities. The same issue comes up when we talk about school districts and whether we can consolidate school districts to avail ourselves of economies of scale and really being able to, with technology, being able to really help students and constituents without having an unwieldy, expensive legislature.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to go to an audience question. And I'm going to read this off my phone, but that's how I'm getting them. Who was next in line, Megan?
I'm sorry. This is a question for Napoleon.
All right, so the question is, please share how your running for state rep has impacted District 144 during the last few months.
I'm assuming that's 154.
154, yes.
Yeah. So, running in these past couple months has been brutal. COVID has changed the landscape, not only of how we run and how we are as candidates, but it's also changed the landscape of how we just live and how we are community. So my office, my team of folks have been out busy running, trying to help feed our homeless and trying to make sure that our food pantries are available and clearly accessible to our residents. We've been helping our seniors. We've been building and producing masks for residents and local businesses. We've been connecting business with those who are willing and able to support. We've really gone about this job of the past couple months with the mindset of, what if COVID-19 happened next year and we were already the state rep? How would we govern in this time? And it's completely changed everything that we are doing as a campaign.
Okay.
Thanks, Napoleon.
All right, Megan.
So we're on to strictly audience questions now. And as you guys know, we take these alphabetically by last name, but this question was specifically for Adrian, who happens to be next anyway. Adrian, how will you change the regressive opinions and policies that now control the Pennsylvania legislature? Are you willing to be tough enough and to stay tough long enough to change things?
Yeah, I'm tough enough. And that's one of the reasons that State Representative Steve McCarter endorsed me as the person who had the leadership. But I'm also extraordinarily passionate and earnest. And one of the things that we city slickers need to do is we need to go out into the countryside. I've been to all 67 counties. I hunt with a crossbow. I have hiked every state park in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm a country girl. And when I go out to the country, I'm not going to treat farmers and foresters and hunters and sportsmen with the disdain that we progressives and we liberals often treat people from the country with. This is a country state. It's a rural state, the largest rural population in the US. The largest number of people who live in municipalities of under 5,000 live here in the state of Pennsylvania. And I know how to connect with people so that we have a shared vision of the good.
Thanks, Adrian.
Okay, the next one will go to Ray. How would you pursue fair redistricting in PA, in Pennsylvania, the redistricting?
Well, first off, I think that gerrymandering has always been a problem. I would support redistricting to just make sure that the power structure gets distributed fairly. I do think it's designed to keep the other party in power, and we do need to have a fair and equitable representation. So I would definitely support any efforts to do redistricting and to revisit everything by constitutional law. So whatever I can do to help in that manner, I am a very, very strong supporter of redistricting and revising what the representation is to make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, so earlier this evening, Adrian mentioned the horse racing industry in Pennsylvania. Gretchen, here's a question about it. The Pennsylvania state government spends hundreds of millions subsidizing the horse racing industry. I find this unconscionable. What would you do about this? You're muted.
Agricultural state, and horse racing actually supports agriculture. It supports our environment. It supports us ecologically. It provides a lot of jobs and helps preserve a sport that many people appreciate. Some people watch football, other people watch horse racing. It's not taking away from anything else when it's self-supporting. It raises money through the slot machines and through gambling and gaming to support it. And it also supports a huge part of what keeps Pennsylvania, which is an agricultural state.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Okay, thank you. Jay, I have a question for you from the audience. What will you do to ensure that the elderly residents in Pennsylvania nursing homes are better protected against any future pandemics?
I would definitely take the current pandemic, COVID-19, and look at that and see, where we have progressed and what we've learned and what we can take from that and go forward, so we could prevent it from happening in the nursing homes as you suggested. And even furthermore, let's say somewhere down the line that there is a vaccination, like similar to the one that's out there that I'm hearing a lot about now. You definitely still have to keep on top of it. If you look at the flu vaccination, it's only 80% effective, and it changes every year. So the vaccination has to be different every year. So that's one of the things we really need to look at when it comes to a vaccination as a whole. And I'm specifically for the nursing homes because they're getting hit so hard. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Okay, Jen, you're next. This is an audience question, as all of these are. How are you reaching out now, and how will you reach out as a state legislator to underrepresented groups in the districts, such as Asian Americans and Muslim Americans?
Well, first, I am committed to diversity and representation within my own staff. I will also identify leaders in all of the communities within our community, and find myself point people that I can call weekly, that my staff can call and keep in touch. I see Steve McCarter doing this. He's reached out to me as a community leader many times. Our Congress people reach out to the community leaders, and I think that's the best way to keep in touch with populations that I'm not a part of. So it'll be both staff representation and just making connections with leaders in the community.
Okay, thank you. The next would be Napoleon. We have a question from the audience. What issue would you be willing to compromise with Republicans in the legislature? What would you compromise? What issues would you be willing to compromise?
I'd be willing to compromise with Republicans on.
Yeah.
So the challenge of getting legislation done, with Republicans, at least where they are now, assuming that they still have some control over the House, is that you might need to compromise on most of those issues where you see goals. The job of the state rep is to continue to have a vision for what we're building. We need to have a vision for the sort of school system that we're building. We need to have a vision for the education of seniors. We need to have a vision for healthcare and social justice. And we need to have a vision for what we do legislatively to improve the environment here. All of those are priorities. All of those, we can plant a flag, and I'll plant a flag in the ground to say, here's ideally where we need to be. And then how we get there, taking that legislation that'll get us 70% of the way there, is far better than we are now. So the goal is to plant a flag and then to work our way there through legislation.
Time. Okay, thank you. Megan?
Okay, you'll have to excuse me. I'm like sorting through a bazillion text messages to try and find the next question. Adrienne, this will be for you. What popular issue are you opposed to, and that you will remain opposed to, even if it will cost you the election?
Well, I'm the person who should be elected because I'm the person who's been endorsed by the incumbent. I'm the person who has that leadership, so I should win the election. But even if it were to cost me the election, I would not back down on the fact that I have a qualified support of keeping our nuclear power plants open and safely operating. If I truly believe that climate response is my top issue, then from a practical standpoint, until we have a fully realized suite of geothermal, solar, and other forms of non-greenhouse energy, then we have to keep our nuclear power plants open. And I have beloved environmentalists who are allies of mine, and they accept that I am a pragmatist who's willing to compromise. People don't like it, but I'm in favor of keeping our nuclear power plants open, keeping those people employed, and keeping those sources of energy which are not creating greenhouse gases until we have all of the things in place for a full energy transition. So we are no longer a fossil state, we're an energy innovation state.
Okay. Time.
Thank you.
All right, great. I actually just was sent a question for Napoleon, and it says, how would you address the topic of environmental justice?
So environmental justice is a really, really difficult one, and my team and I have been talking about it an awful lot. In fact, we'll be putting out a pretty in-depth policy piece on environment and how we intend to address that in Harrisburg on the next day or two. Environmental justice for me is a critical solution because it really marries two different areas. One is just a concern for the environment, which we all have. And the second is an appreciation for the fact that the environmental movement hasn't yet touched all people. We haven't all yet gotten on board as we need to with the environment. And environmental justice right now is kind of a term that we use to try and highlight the fact that there are those of us who are on the outside. Specifically though, and it's not as popular, to me, environmental justice requires our planning for how we handle environmental refugees. It involves us looking at ensuring that they have a policy at the state level to study this, which we do.
Time.
I think my time is up, but our policy coming out in a day or two.
Thanks, Napoleon. Let's see. We are now with Ray. And these will be our last two audience questions. So Ray, how will you ensure education about the opioid crisis becomes a topic addressed on a continual basis in our schools, from elementary school to high school?
Well, by legislation. I mean, you have to, you could actually do that by legislation and make sure it's part of the curriculum that's mandated. You can actually work with the community and with the townships to make sure they see the value in teaching our student preventative measures so that they don't fall into an epidemic that we know is a lifetime epidemic once you're involved in it. So it's a matter of teaching the adults how to teach the kids about it.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank
I
you.
have, I have one more, and then Irv, you'll wrap it up. Gretchen, what bill can you introduce to support seniors who face losing homes due to rising taxes? What relief will you seek for financially vulnerable seniors at a state level?
Well, financially vulnerable seniors need their taxes frozen. So I would introduce a bill that would freeze taxes for seniors over 65 or on a fixed income receiving Social Security. It's one of the first things we can do to start addressing the issue of our seniors not being able to stay in their homes. We need to go back and we need to rethink the property tax issue anyway, because it's a regressive tax and it's not fairly funding our schools. We need to rethink global tax reform in terms of sales tax, personal income tax, and the entire corporate tax, as well as probably liquid fuel and other taxes. It's the whole package of tax reform that I would introduce.
Thank you. Sorry. Irv?
Okay, we have one more question, but this is sort of a lighter question, so everybody can kind of relax a little bit on this one. And I'm going to ask each person, and I'm just going to go down. Same question. If you can have any superpowers, what would it be? Jay, real quick.
I would fly.
Fly?
Yeah.
Jen?
I'd be invisible because you've all heard me say that I think it's more important to listen than talk, and my power of invisibility would get me everywhere and I would listen to everything.
Napoleon?
The wisdom of Solomon. I don't know if that's
That's
That's not a superpower.
I haven't seen anyone else have it yet, so I'm claiming it.
No, that's not a good one. Adrian?
I already have that superpower. My grandmother used to say, where there's a will, there's a way. And I've got the will, and I figure out the way, and I get other people around me, and I make it happen.
And not a superpower. That's a grandma power. Ray?
Foresight. I want to see what's around the corner before I'm there. So that would be my superpower.
Okay. And Gretchen?
My superpower, I would hope, would be the power of healing. I'd like to be able to heal the sick, the disabled, folks that are just generally in need.
Like that.
I get another shot at that. My superpower is that I want to wave a wand and get rid of the COVID virus.
Hey, Irv?
Sorry, no second shots. Yes.
Irv, I have a last minute question
Yes,
from an
okay, go
audience member. This is for everybody as well. What is your position on the need for improved infrastructure and SEPTA spending? Specifically, do you believe that government is about financing that? What do you think government is for? Let's go backwards up to the top. Gretchen, can you start with that?
Absolutely. I do that every day on a daily basis. Federal government is used to take big initiatives that can have positive impact or negative impact. And what I do with SEPTA is work on positive impact. I help to leverage federal funds to accelerate the replacement of the diesel buses with an all-electric fleet. I'm working on guaranteed electric contracts where we're purchasing solar power so that we can reduce the emissions from the rail system. Pretty soon, we're going to have an entire subway system that has zero emissions power. I think those are the kind of projects. Investments in infrastructure can improve our environment, provide good, safe jobs for folks, and really make the environment better. It has a huge impact.
Thanks, Gretchen. We'll go to, we're going to go to Ray. We're going to go backwards up. Ray?
Well, my opinion is that government is there to regulate and to kind of direct. So I do think that with the right direction, SEPTA can be an incredible partner with us. Now, should we be subsidizing it or putting massive amounts of taxpayer money in projects? No. We could do partnerships where we direct them into what we want as far as a green effort. And I do agree that at this particular point in our lifetimes, we do need to migrate to electric, and we have to give SEPTA the right motivation and the right incentives to go ahead and start with the migration from what they have into electric. But I do think that SEPTA can be a fantastic partner for our government.
Thank you. Adrian?
So the original question was whether or not we should put money into SEPTA. Yes, absolutely. There is no passenger train that has ever broken even. SEPTA was supposed to break even this year, but it didn't happen. Government is there to have vision and to rally resources. And at this moment of a pandemic, we have a convergence of the urgent and the important. The goal and the purpose of government is to bring together the leadership to achieve what it is urgent to achieve and what it is important to achieve as a society.
Thanks, Adrian. Napoleon?
I'm not sure what that all meant. The goal of government is to help people. The goal of government is to educate our kids, take care of our seniors. The goal of government is to demonstrate that when people need something, if you're there to provide it, right? That's what government is there to do. That's what public safety nets. That's what, the appropriate rule of law. I don't understand, the rest of that language that was used. Yes, I absolutely believe that public transportation is crucial to our communities. It is both a very efficient, it is a economically effective, it is a fairly environmentally efficient way of transportation. And for many, it is the way that people can get to work. It is the way that many seniors and many residents are getting to their doctors. It's absolutely important that government provide those resources. Again, we must be living our values.
Thanks, Napoleon. Jen?
Communities with excellent public transit thrive. All across the country, we see that. So yes, I believe it is the government's responsibility to contribute to excellent public transport on a long-range planning system down to the daily operation. Public transportation is a great equalizer. It provides everybody with access to employment and education and healthcare and food. So I believe strongly in public transportation. I believe it's the government's job to provide it.
Thank you. And Jay?
Yeah, I definitely believe it's government's job and their role and their responsibility to provide for citizens. And I do believe in public transportation, and I think the government should have an involvement in that, especially when, it's green and people use it, and it gets them to work and it gets them to the places they need to be. And it helps with real estate too. I mean, a lot of people, when they're looking for a place to move, they're looking to be within walking distance or a stone's throw from a train station, so they can get on that train and they can get to work or wherever they need to go. So yeah, government is to provide.
Thanks, Jay. Irv? Oh,
You're
I
muted.
can't hear you.
Okay, so I just got a question sent to me, and this question is for Ray. And this is going to be sort of the last question of the night. With the pandemic leaving people jobless, with reducing hours and pay, how would you increase employment in Montco?
Well, Montgomery County has done well in adapting best practices from other places. But as an expert in emergency management, I've been selected by 3 governors to lead emergency management situations. Most recently I did the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, which was massive. We do need tracers. We do need resources to purchase our tests that we don't have. My wife is the leader for the only comprehensive COVID positive unit in the state. So we do have that perception of being on the front lines. So there is a lot of employment opportunities during the COVID era, and that we can offer those opportunities. And there's the funds up. We have the funds. We just need the personnel, and it's there. That's my approach.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thanks, Ray. All right, so that's it. We have time for our closing question. Now, first said it was going to be 60 seconds, but we've increased it to 90 seconds. Each of you will have 90 seconds. And this is sort of our closing question. Here it is. Why should our viewers vote for you? You can also use this time to further answer any issues raised earlier in the forum. But the question is, why should our viewers vote for you? And we'll start in alphabetical order with Jay.
Well, I think voters should vote for me just based on my experience in government. I know I've said it before. I've been a member of Jenkintown's Borough Council for 11 years now. I was first elected in 2009. I've been elected to 3 terms. I'm the vice president of council, and I chair the Public Works Department or Public Works Committee, which leads me into infrastructure, which is a big part of my platform. And, you know, outside the COVID-19 pandemic, I believe that's one of the biggest challenges facing the 154th. And I have a lot of experience and background with that when it comes to working with engineers and contractors and acquiring grants for infrastructure improvements. Also, I've done a lot within my community. I've been a community leader for, I've been a member of the Jenkintown Democratic Committee for 17 years. And 4 of those years I've spent as chairman of the Jenkintown Democratic Committee. And I'm very, very proud of that and the work I've done within the community. I won't go into it. I know I'm short on time. Also, I've been endorsed by the Pennsylvania Nurses Union. Again, I mentioned that earlier. I'm very proud of that. I've also been endorsed by the Pennsylvania AFL-CIO, which represents over 900,000 members. And I've been endorsed by the PA Conference of Teamsters. Now, I don't think that any of this would have happened unless they, you know, my peers and the endorsements that I've gotten, I think is a good indicator that I'm a leader and that I can get things done. And I will bring that to Harrisburg.
Time.
Okay, Jennifer?
As we work to recover from the pandemic, the single most important character trait in a leader is going to be resiliency. It's been an unprecedented disruption to our society and our economy. Every single thing has been touched. We need leaders who aren't afraid to start from zero and build a completely new approach to the rules and the systems of government. We will have an opportunity now to create programs and policies that make our state work for all Pennsylvania. This pandemic has laid us bare. It has exposed things that we all probably knew were there, and now they are absolutely in front of our faces. We cannot ignore them anymore. We cannot ignore that when schools closed, children weren't eating. Resiliency, for better or for worse, is my specialty. I know that from tragedy comes the gift of new opportunities to start over. I will go to Harrisburg and fight for a better Pennsylvania where we all have these things. We all have access to food and health care. Our children are safe and educated, and we build a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture. We are all, although the people on the screen here are on our best behavior at these events, don't take our word for it. Ask around, talk to the people who know us and who have worked with us. If we're not working in our communities, ask why. Find out what we're like when we think nobody's watching.
Time.
All right, Napoleon?
Thank you. This community is our home, and our neighbors are like family. Over these last 18 years, since my wife and I have lived here, we've celebrated with you all. I've been part of groundbreaking ceremonies and ribbon cuttings. I've honored students, cheered on volunteers. I've attended weddings and bar mitzvahs, handed out diplomas, and sadly, sat Shiva, mourned the passing of loved ones, attended funerals. You are who I think about when I go to work each morning or when I attend any of a number of meetings. You are what I think about and who I think about when I propose or vote on policy. And you, my community, are why I'm running for state representative. We live in a pretty darn good neighborhood, but if COVID-19 has taught us anything, it should be the urgency of this moment and the urgency to act. We need every Pennsylvanian to have quality health care, and we need it yesterday. Our most vulnerable seniors are living in houses they can barely afford, or perhaps they're in a senior care facility that their limited resources are allowing them to live in, and their quality of care is clearly lacking. Our school system was lacking the resources needed to optimize their time when the buildings were open. Our commercial quarters have been hurting for years. Our justice system has been packing our residents into prisons when there are other advantages for way too long. Wealthiest businesses have been taking advantage of tax programs and government handouts for way too long. This is nothing new. Perhaps the only thing that COVID-19 has helped is that our environment has finally had some time.
Thank you, Napoleon. Adrian?
Hi, I'm the person who has arranged for sewing hundreds of handmade masks for people on the front line and communities that have an infected family member. I've planted trees. I helped to bring the Cedar Street Park into existence. I've brought money into Jenkintown Borough. I'm the person who rolls up her sleeves and gets dirt under her fingernails. You've probably seen me out in the community with my sleeves rolled up and with dirt under my fingernails. Our viewers should vote for me because I'm the one who gets things done. I started the recycling program in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. State Representative Steve McCarter believes I am the person to fill his big shoes. I'm also endorsed by State Representative Joe Cerisi, Montgomery County Jury Commissioner Joanne Olszewski, Food and Water Watch, and a number of other environmental organizations. Our viewers should vote for me because I've written and implemented policies such as the Cheltenham Energy Coalition Plan, the Pennsylvania Wellness and Prevention Plan. I've implemented these things, I've taught about these things, and I have made them happen. I am the one who makes things happen, and I'll make things happen in Harrisburg.
Thank you, Adrian. Ray?
Voters should take me into consideration and vote for us simply because I have the state experience for a state position. I worked for 3 governors already, everybody knows that. Now, we have candidates that are environmental leaders, but then Montgomery County was given an F in air quality by American Lung Association 3 years in a row. Our water, you can't drink it. Then we have taxation that's killing our community, and a police force that's being shafted because we can't get a balanced budget. This is the message that's being sent. My position is we need to develop our abandoned business district that we all see every single day. We need to help our people stay in their homes. You cannot allow the same situation to go forward, and then the same people that put us there, they actually have a plan, to stop it. If they did, they would have done it. We need to start, and we need to start now. Our environment is important. It needs to take another turn. Results are important. I have been emergency management director for 3 administrations. I know how to manage COVID. My wife is a leader in the COVID management community locally. So I do have the leadership in my campaign, and you should vote for me simply because we bring the experience from day one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray. And Gretchen, bring us home.
Great. Save the best for last. Voters should consider me. As this crisis highlights, leadership matters, experience matters in a crisis. Crisis provides us with an opportunity to make things better, to rethink the way things are done, and to make things better. I have spent my entire life and my career working for Democrats to get them elected and to change policy for the better. From my time as an economic analyst working on healthcare to provide healthcare for more Americans than we ever had before, to my time as a law clerk for Senator Patrick Leahy on the United States Judiciary Committee, my time as a law clerk on the Eastern District Court and the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. I've spent my career in the law working on municipal finance, helping school districts, state and local governments, hospitals and universities finance improvements that make lives better for everyone. I've working quietly behind the scenes for years getting things done. I've worked on legislation, I've passed tough budgets and fought for legislation that will increase funding for schools, healthcare, and the environment. I've done all of these things. I don't need to learn legislative process. I've worked as chief counsel for the Department of Revenue for 2 governors and done the same for both. I've worked on both sides of the aisle to get legislation passed and to pass important policy initiatives. We need to take Pennsylvania forward in a new direction, and I have the experience and the leadership.
Thank you. All right, that's it for tonight. I'd like to thank the candidates for giving us the opportunity to get to know them better. And for everyone tuning in on Facebook and on YouTube, I'd like to thank you guys for doing that. I love the questions. I'd like to thank the committee for putting this together. Remember, the primary is Tuesday, June 2nd. Go to votepa.com tonight to request your mail-in ballot. And I'd like to end this with my new hero, what she says every day, Dr. Levine: stay safe, stay calm, stay home. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.